No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Well, I'm Aine. I'm the Gryphon Scribe for the summits. I've also been working with their highnesses on their reign this time. And I've only been playing for about 6 years. And I have jumped, completely into the deep end as much as I can on Scibal. Because I got into it because I like to draw and I like to paint, and it was an easy thing for me to get into and do some kind of service. I like helping, and I want to help in a way that I enjoy, which is art, doing a lot of art, and it's a way for me to feel like I'm a part of the game we play, because we do get to give so many awards. The principality, the kingdom, the baronies get to give awards and to recognize amazing work by the people who are playing the game and making it possible for this to happen. And so it's a way for me to feel like I can contribute something. And so I'm going to basically be talking about kind of some of the tools I use in designing, what we're looking for in regards to your margins and design work, and making sure that it's very, very basic one-on-one kind of things. I'm also going to be adding stuff to the Summits website. We do actually have a tab for Scribal. I was just given all of the information so I can get things up on that site. So I will have a list of what I'm recommending as tools. These are just recommendations. These are things that I have found have helped me when I design. There's really, I don't want to say there's no right or wrong, but these are basic things I think that anyone can find pretty inexpensively. I haven't always had the biggest budget, so I have been really good at finding ways to do things less expensively. And then, I want to definitely take some questions. If people have any questions, I'm here for that, definitely here for that. And I'll be sure to do the best I can about reiterating any questions that are put in the chat, so we all know we're on the same page, and anyone watching the video in the future will know what questions were asked. So I guess I'll start talking about the tools I use, because I want to break it down as easily and to the basics as much as possible. The tablets I use a lot of are gridded paper. They're made by a company called Bienfang. You see it in my window here. It is, you can find it on Amazon. I'll provide a link on the website, on the Summits page, for the materials. You can also find it at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, art shops. I like using this because the blue lines are non-reproducible. So when you're designing a charter for Summits or even the Kingdom, once you have it finished, those blue lines that give you that nice graph where you can actually have all of your lines straight and everything, and proportions the way you want them to be, don't show up when you make the copies of the actual finished works. We're also doing a lot of things digitally these days, where this can be scanned and the line work doesn't show up as very much in the scans as well. And so it does make it very easy. So again, this is Bienfang. I use the 11 by 17. This is pretty much a standard size that we do a lot of our charters in. We also do 8.5 by 11, which I have that tablet too, not with me right now. So again, I'll show a couple of things in regards to how the charters are set up in a few minutes. I also love things like templates. I use a lot of templates. I have square templates, I have round templates, I have triangular templates because sometimes I don't want to recreate the wheel. And this is helpful because when I'm doing circular things, I don't have to worry about getting the circle just right. And of course, your handy dandy rulers. And I draw a lot in mechanical pencil because it has a nice fine line and it's pretty consistent. I like drawing with mechanical pencils, have been for a long time. I also have, when I'm inking, I have whiteout pen. I also use the whiteout tape when I'm inking as well, in case there are any mistakes made, because they won't show up when they're copied. I also have different sizes of erasers. And when I'm lining, I use, the one I use a lot right now is called the Pigma Micron 05. This is what is recommended across on tier and summits because the line work isn't too thin or too thick. It's just a kind of happy medium. If it's too thin, it doesn't copy well and it's hard to paint because you want to be able to paint in the lines, and if the line is too thin, it's really easy to go outside the lines. So the Micron pens work really well. I also have not used these yet, but I also bought myself a new set of Prismacolor lining pens. And you want lining pens that are acid-free. They are light, fast, and archival quality. Because when you're doing that artwork, you also want to keep the artwork for yourself a lot of times, and you want it to stand up for times so you can use it in your portfolios when you're showing off your art at ANS nights and at the ANS booths and competitions and such. So I use the fine liners a lot. But the 05 is one that is highly recommended because, as again, it's not too thin or too thick. Things to keep in mind when designing your charters is, got two examples here inked a little bit. Let's see, trying to make sure this is seen in the camera. So this is basically just a mock-up of a portrait on 11 by 17. You want your margins there because you want to make sure that there's enough room for a frame to go around your charter. And so we've had issues in the past where the artwork has gone to the edges of the paper, and then you have to get things matted to put in a frame to make the artwork not be covered up by frame. And so we want to give as much opportunity for the artwork to really show, and the artisan who's spent so much time creating it, we don't want that work to be covered up by framing. And so on the top I have 1.5 inches on portrait, and on the sides it's an inch border, and on the bottom it's 3.5 inches. The finished size is 9 by 12. And so that's a very easy to frame size. That's a very standard size frame. We give the 3.5 inches on the bottom. So what we've done in the past is, if, say, the chart you've designed and calligraphed in runes, you can put on the bottom what the runes are, what their letter is represented by, and what the text says. So it gives, also it can give notes to the painters on maybe sometimes what era maybe the artwork was done from, or how to paint certain aspects of, let's say, our grail, or because we do have different wards that have colored grails. And so we want to make sure that those notes are there. What you've also been seeing a lot nowadays is once the charter is printed, you'll usually get something with, once you receive a charter, either to paint or it's given to you as an award, you'll see on the back now a piece of paperwork usually that it also has who it was designed by, some of the same information that'd be on the bottom. So someone can type that up and put those on the back, and that will show what the award says, who did the artwork, who made, and then people can sign off when they painted it, who painted it. So it's a way to really give the artisan and the people that put so much work into it kind of their kudos to show, yeah, so-and-so did do the artwork on this. And it also gives it the possibility for the heralds to read off of that to say, you know, this award says, you know, for, you know, the different awards, what it is, and who painted and designed that. And they are trying harder and harder to say those things during courts. That way it gets known that there's more than just the people getting the awards that put the work in. It's the people that are designing the awards too. It's a good way, because usually Scribal artists and illuminators are in the back or off somewhere else painting, and it's really hard for the artisans to be seen if they're always in the back. They're always in the background doing the background work. So it's a way to really recognize the artisans. You'll also see on here, you'll see it that I've got it marked out for the seal. For the seal for the summits, it is 1 and 3, I have it written down. It's 1 3/4 round. But I have noticed when I am making the seals, the wax does spread, and sometimes you get a little bit more wax spread than others. And so you really want to give a 2-inch circle to kind of give where the seal should go. And you kind of want to write in the area where the seal goes lightly the word seal, or even a cartoon image of an actual animal seal. And you don't want to outline the circle around it, because sometimes the wax seal doesn't fit the circle completely. And so people will just have to fill that in. So I draw the circle so I kind of know where the lines are until I ink it. And then I erase the lines. This is so I can draw and go, okay, I can't go into this because then where does the seal go? We always have to make sure that there's room for the seal for the summits. Kingdom does have different size seals. I don't have that information right on hand, but again, on the website, I will have all of the documents I've gotten from on Terra as well. And I'll be doing new guidelines for just the summit, so it's simpler. So you don't have to read through all of the Kingdom guidelines to understand how to design for the summits. We're going to be doing a lot of the same things that the Kingdom does to help set a standard, because we want to make it, in a sense, formulaic. We want to make it so it's easy. It doesn't have to be something hard and, oh, how do I do this? It's too much work. It's too hard to do. I want to make it as easy as possible, because I want to encourage more artisans to come and enjoy and experience the joy of Scibal. And so we just don't want to outline the seal circle, like I said. You also want to make sure that you have space for the signatures of their highnesses, or their excellencies, or whoever the award signature is going to be from. And you want to make sure you give enough space, because some people write real small, some people write real big, some names go on forever. So you want to make sure that you give enough space for the signatures. So basically, after all of this, anything above the seal or around the seal in some cases is where you're going to be designing your charter work. You can do your columns and all of your words, but you really don't want to go past where the seal is, because you want to give enough space for signatures. And some of the awards are very wordy. When you're doing award work or doing charter designs, and if you're just designing, you can ask the calligrapher, or ask for a calligrapher who you can work with, maybe. And you can also ask for, what does the award say? So you can kind of plan how much space is needed for all the words. as you're designing, because that gives the calligrapher plenty of space to write what it actually says if you kind of give that amount of space. What I've done in the past for calligraphers is I've been designing on my iPad, to be honest, these days, because I can do a lot more planning and plotting. But I will write out something I'll type it out to kind of give what space the calligrapher has. So I'll let them know, right now you've got, 8 inches across and up and down, or whatever that space is for the words. That way they're also going into it knowing, oh, I write too big, that's not going to work well, or I write small, that's going to be perfect. So I like to give that information to the calligraphers as well, because it gives them something that they know. Another wanted to show what it looked like for landscape. So again, you have your border of 1.5 inches on the left side of the page, and 1 inch on the top and the bottom. And then on the right side of the page, you have that 3.5 inches again, which you'll have that 3.5 inches again. And again, always the finished size is 9x12. And if you can see here, I didn't center the seal on the page. You can put the seal, depending on what your artwork is, anywhere on the page. It just needs to be on the page and have enough space around it. I've done things where I've had the seal as a representation of the sun, and it's been in the right hand corner. I've done seals where it's been dead center. I've done artwork, and I've seen artwork where the words will go all around a seal right in the middle of the page. So there's no set way you have to set the seal, but that we have to have the seal. It just needs to be able to be on there and have space. And you want to make sure that the signatures, there's plenty of space for. When we're talking about designing charters, there's many websites you can go to that are online and free to look at artwork. When it comes to designing charters, it depends on who you're designing the charters for, as to what time frame they want, as to what calligraphy they want. Some people are very set in, I want it to be 14th century England, I want it to have a certain type of calligraphy, and you'll also get recommendations or requests. There was one time I had one for the king and queen one time, Svala, and I'm having a blank on the other name, where they asked for the queen's heraldic animal, which was the teat, and the king loved foxes, or then one of the golden retrievers somewhere depicted on the artwork. So when you're doing artwork for your barony or the principality or the kingdom, if they don't give you any specifications as to what they want to see in the artwork, it is always okay to ask whoever their scribal person is, or the principality or kingdom scribal person. They can get that information for you. And so if you want to design artwork for charters, all you have to do is ask what's being requested, what time frame are they from, what era, what place, and they can give you all that info. I don't know if anyone has any questions right now. Again, I will have a link page on the Summit's website with a bunch of links you can go to. You can go to Pinterest. You can do searches on just Google images for 16th century Italian illumination. Or if you're doing something for a fencer, or a rapier, or cut and thrust, you can look for 16th century, rapier or cut and thrust, images. You can pull from different aspects. I mean, a lot of times you don't have to do just something that you've seen in biblical. When I've done Norse artwork, I've done things where I have found jewelry that has inspired my artwork, because there weren't charters or there weren't scrolls back then in certain times for the Norse era. And so your inspiration can be many places. And if anyone has any questions, just make sure you let them know. Well, I found this from, and it was from the 14th century, and it might not have been an actual scroll, but it was jewelry, or it was a painting, or it was a rug, or tiles, or wherever your inspiration is from. As long as you can kind of tell people where it came from, there's usually no problems. I haven't had many problems with that. And when I have, I've just told them what I've gotten. It's where I've gotten information from. And so usually when I start working on artwork, I'll usually go in with some kind of idea as to what I want to do. And I have many examples. Some of my first charters I'd done were for the Shire of Corvaria, where I started out. I'm now at Adiantum. And so, cat hair, always plentiful in that. And so you'll see on this is for an Arts and Science Award. And it was for the champion of Arts and Sciences. And so you'll see, I'm going to cover my camera a little bit. You'll see that on the side, I have a little bit of a border where I put arts and science symbols. You'll see that I have the Corvarian Covid, or the raven. You'll see that I had the Corvaria written down there, and the Corvid is on a paintbrush. And this is what the award says, and it's all done in runes. And so it can be really, and it's a simple line work. You want to make sure that when you're also designing awards, you don't add too much detail. You want it to be simple line work where you can see what the artwork is supposed to be, but there's not a lot of detail, because you want to give the painters the opportunity to add as much detail or as little detail as they want. So I've got many examples here of, this one is for the archery, and it's a simple line work. And you want to make, and again, if the line work isn't too thick or too thin, it copies nicely, and it gives room for the painters to add their own style to it. We also, as charter designers, have to remember that not everyone who gets a charter is going to do all the pieces of painting it. You're going to maybe get someone who just likes doing the background work, or just likes laying down the very basic colors, and then someone else will take it and add all the very fine details, where all the white work and all the black work and those shadows and all of that can really make the artwork pop better. And so, I mean, this one was for a children's arts and science and Bardic and Archery Award. And this was done for His Excellency Durin and Excellency Caradwin when they were reigning. And so they wanted something Persian. This has happened to be Ottoman, actually. I thought it was Persian, but it's Ottoman. But you see that the artwork goes to the borders where I drew them, and there's room for the seal. There wasn't as much room for the seal as I had intended, or the signatures. That did become a little bit of an issue. But again, the artwork isn't too thick or thin. There's enough space for people to do their own detail work, or just color the very basic lines in. And that calligraphy I did by myself, it is what they call a pseudo hand. This was done for His Excellency Turk and His Excellency Seamus when they were reigning, and they wanted Tudor and they wanted, since Seamus is all about the botanicals and plants, I wanted to make sure to add that kind of stuff in. I've also got a griffin down here. This was for the I'm not remembering what this award was right now. I'm trying to read it upside down, but it's not working. And so this one, I wanted to make sure that it kind of fit who the prince and princess were at the time, or the prince and prince, or whoever is reigning at the time. So it gives a lot of examples as to what kind of artwork can be done. I've also done commissions for this is a, words are escaping me. This is a contract between two people for their Laurel and master to work together for a year and a day while they're learning from each other. And so this is designed with their heraldic symbols, and it says what they wanted their contract to say, and then they were able to split it down the center. I actually had was able to add a zigzag kind of sort of when it was forward, so they could just rip it apart and it came apart really nicely.
We did have a question come up in the chat.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick explanation of what a pseudo hand is?
Okay, thank you. To answer the question, what a pseudo hand is that they are hands where there's some documentation, but it's not exact, because there's not a lot of ways. From what I understand, there's not a lot of ways to learn how to do the hand. They're called pseudo because they're not exact, but they're sort of what would have been used. So it's help me with words, I can't think. Huh? It's best guess. Sorry, I'm asking my partner in crime to give me words and I lose them. And so these help with, and you can find these also, I'll have them on the website. There's quite a few that have been developed that are best guess to what it would be in English, because it's really hard to write in Persian if you don't know what it says. And so these are ways to give it the look of maybe the Persian, but still be legible and still be able to know what it says. We'll show this one. So I don't do calligraphy very often. I'm brand new at it. Trying to see if I can get this better in frame here. That's better. So what I did was I made sure to do the artwork and left plenty of space for the calligrapher to put what they needed to in the center. And so when doing this kind of artwork, this was for a fighting award. And my hand for this was not good. So I just drew the artwork for it and left lots of space for the calligrapher to add the lines of what it actually reads as. I've also done things where if I know, this is a little tip and trick, if I know that there's going to be a repeating pattern on the borders, what I'll do a lot of times is I do have computer software where I can copy and paste it into, so I have one nice image that goes on both. So it does help with that. There's ways to do that. Or you can just trace. Tracing is definitely period, and it makes things easy. So if you see that you have something that's a repeating pattern in your border or wherever, draw it out on something and just trace it. So you can have one good image instead of trying to recreate it 8 times. And then when things get copied, you get a charter without all the lines from the graph paper. And this is basically what you get to paint as an artisan, as an illuminator, as someone who's going to be painting the charters. So you don't see all of those graph lines. You don't see all of the oopses and the mistakes and the imperfections. I like to show that when I'm showing it, doing a class, I show the whiteout. I say, see, here I made a mistake, because when you get that on a final charter, you're not going to see it. So it makes things, it doesn't have to be perfect first off. Once it gets lined and copied, people will see that it looks perfect, and it doesn't have to start there. It just needs to kind of end there. You also sometimes will get to do invitations for events. I did this for the Principality Coronet for March in Corvaria. So I did a basic invitation, and I didn't have to worry about the size. I did make it 8.5 by 11 because I wanted it to be easily printed and easily painted. But this also doesn't have any space for the seal because there wasn't needing a seal. So something like this would be perfect for doing your letters of intent for sergeantry. Making sure that however you design it, you've got enough space for your writing and however you're going to paint it. Even when I'm doing something as a scroll or something I've been commissioned, I still plot and plan it to as much as possible, as to the nth degree as I can, because I don't want to just draw it out on the finished paper and go, all the mistakes, all the oops, all of the whiteout is now on the finished work. I like to make sure when they get something finalized, when they get that piece, it is, to my best ability, the best I can do. And there's sometimes I'm a perfectionist where I will make mistakes and go, okay, it's more medieval. There's lots of mistakes made in scrolls. You'll see even line work for where your lines are for the Scibal, the calligraphers to write. You'll see in some examples in what you're looking at for inspiration, you'll see where people have left very noticeable lines so they can keep the text straight. And so they'll have underlining of all the words, and everything is kind of graphed out as to where everything should end. And as a calligrapher, you'll also see when you're looking through all of your examples that the calligraphy can change, because with some of these scrolls, someone might be working on it for a couple hours and stop, and then someone else will pick up, and it won't be the exact same lettering. It'll be a little off. But you'll see things like lines and eraser marks and oopses and all that. It's medieval. And if anyone wants to give you guff about it, send them my way. I'm more than happy to show examples to others. So you'll see a lot of these examples where there may have been mistakes happening. There are lines where it shows what people did to use to kind of give them guidelines. You'll see splotches of ink. You'll see all kinds of things where you're just like, oh, it's not perfect, but it's still beautiful. It's still enjoyed. It's still, there's beauty in the imperfection even. And so I was given this book to help remind me as a perfectionist that it doesn't have to be so perfect. This is a great book I was given. It's a treasury of decorative art and calligraphy. It had a lot of great examples of all kinds of art and styles of calligraphy to show what's been done. But yeah, when you want to give a charter to someone to paint, I recommend don't do all that frilly work as you're inking it for them. Leave it simple. They can add all that frilly work that they want to. That's really hard with all those very fine lines for someone else to paint who's new. That will intimidate new painters. Do not do this to a new painter. Keep it simple. People who want to do the frilly can do the frilly. You also see awards and charters where it's just words and scrolls with just words. And they make it pretty with letters being illuminated. So that is definitely a thing as well. In this one, it's written all over in underneath it and above it as to what the things say even. So there's a lot of things there that they did to help make it understandable. Artwork like this is a lot of fun to paint. Gives lots of opportunities for people to put their own spin on it, to add more detail. I think this is a great example of a period piece that isn't too decorated, but it also shows where there can be more done with it. Again, really pretty, but don't draw the circles for the little white dots. Someone will do the white dots themselves. Unless you're painting, you can do all that work if you want to, or you can just paint the Be Simple and then be able to have someone else go in and do all the really pretty work. These are, I think, some really good examples of all kinds of scrolls are given. This one was from a decorated manuscript from 1340 England. So there's lots of examples out there. There's lots of places to look for information. You do not have to go straight from your head, and you don't have to use just one piece to design charters from, to design scrolls from. You can say, well, I like a lot of part A, a lot of part B, a lot of part C from these different, from 3 or 4 different pieces if you want. There's lots of opportunities to do many styles within that era or that region. You may not want to do, you know, every bit of this, but if there's something you like, you can add, to say you like how the seal is on the bottom, and you want to add, oops, hold on, trying to get my camera arranged here. If you like something that's in that seal artwork, you can do just what inspires you from that. And it can change things. It doesn't have to be, don't want to say verbatim because that's for writing, but you don't have to draw it verbatim either. You can change things up. You can use it just basic inspiration to say, well, I really like this, so I want to do a griffin and or swords and or paintbrushes or whatever you want to add to it to make it unique and make it something you've designed. It can be all inspiration. You can trace the complete piece if you want to. I've done a bit of both. I've done some designing where it's complete tracing. I've done pieces where I've taken pieces from 3 or 4 different from different examples where I have used 3 or 4 different examples to design an award. So there's lots of opportunities, lots of styles to choose from. These kind of awards are a lot of fun to give because, there we go. Opposite what I think it should be. And so I just did an award like this not that long ago for Antoine and Catherine, where it had an image on one side of the page, and then it had a basic border that is representation of something from half the page, and then had plenty of room for text on the bottom and the scroll and the seal. So you don't have to just do one full image. You can break it up into 2 squares, 2 rectangles, 2 circles. There's plenty of opportunities for you to do the artwork that inspires you. We're seeing more and more awards that are done in landscape, but a lot of awards are also done in portrait. It's up to you as the artist how you want to do it. The basic guidelines are pretty much the same. Again, another award that was just done, a scroll done just in words. But there's an art to that even. That's a block printing that was done. So there's lots of opportunities to let your imagination kind of go, and lots of examples out there of all kinds that have been done. We're about 45 minutes in. This is, and sometimes you can do special, even if you're like, well, it's only good for the SCA. It's not true. I did our wedding designs for our wedding invitations using my Scribal skills. And so there's opportunities to use it in real life, not just in the SCA. I don't know if I can get it on there well enough. Well, maybe we cut this part out of the video. But it can be used in many aspects. This was inspired by Lord of the Rings, but I use that basic knowledge to help me design something that could be used for wedding invitations. Do you have any other questions coming through? I think I feel pretty.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask, so you had talked a little bit about the beginning about some of the things to avoid. Is there kind of a particular mistake or set of mistakes that people commonly make that we can maybe have a heads up and avoid?
I think the biggest thing that mistake that people commonly make is that they forget that when they're designing, that someone who may not have a lot of experience is going to paint it. That's why I really wanted to bring up that some people are just going to color something in very basic colors. So you want to not put too many fiddly bits in it for when you're lining it and inking it for someone else to fill in, because when you're getting someone who's brand new, they're going to look at it and be very intimidated. We want it to be kind of like an adult coloring book. Think of it as that. And also lining thickness has been a thing as well. Too thick is almost better than too thin, because it gives enough line work and can make the painting really stand out. But too thin makes it really hard for that new person to paint in the lines if there's almost no line. Okay. And so that is something that we've seen a lot. I've actually, for myself even, I've had instances where someone came back to me and said, your work is really pretty, but someone who's brand new isn't going to have the best time painting this because it's too detailed. And at first I was like, oh, man, that sucks. I put all this time into it and da-da-da. I'm like, and then I'm like, wait, I lost myself there. Someone else has to paint this. Someone like me who's had more experience probably wouldn't have an issue. But someone who's just like, hey, I want to paint trotters. they get it and they're going, yeah, I don't know what to do with all that.
Good
And
to
so
know.
we give lots of opportunity for people who just want to paint by numbers and just kind of fill things in and just get their experience doing that at first. And then we want people who are just like, my thing is not doing all the fiddly bits. If someone wants to go in and add the fiddly bits, that's totally fine. They just want to paint the background and in the basic lines. They don't want to have to worry about doing the shadows right and where the light source is coming from and all that kind of stuff. They just want to have fun painting.
Yeah.
And then we have people who will just do every bit of it that they possibly can. And so we have to allow for that to happen for all of them.
Okay.
It takes everyone.
Yes.
And we definitely want to know if another thing to know is if you're giving or getting charters back and there's been more than one person who's painted it, or more than one person who's done the calligraphy or any of the different bits and pieces, we want that all signed in pencil on the back. We're trying to make it a common thing where there is a card on the back where people can write their names, and it gives something for the herald to read, and also gives the person that's getting the award they know who the artisan was and how many people worked on it. Only way that a lot of the artisans get any recognition, because it is an ANS and it is also a service, so it can be seen as both. And I'm seeing someone, Randall Courtney, showing some artwork. Very nice.
This is like, so I had a project that I wanted to kind of do. You're familiar with the Stevie Wonder song, My Cherie Amour?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to do, I want to combine this and sheet music and the lyrics. And the 4 boxes on the side should correspond with each chorus. And this is one of these things that I go, hey, I'll do this. And then I put it on a back burner and never got around to doing it. But I don't know if you can,
I got some really good stuff there.
My penmanship, not so great.
You know, it's a work in progress. I haven't really started working with calligraphy yet. I have books. I've got, I just got this one. I recommend it highly because it's got so many different hands in it. At least I can get in frame.
Yeah, but it was an idea I had. One of these days, maybe I'll use it as a another sergeantry entry some year from now.
I think that looks really good. Recommendation, if you would like it, would be to make sure you have margins.
Oh yeah.
If it's going to be given to someone with My Cherie Amour, if it's going to be given as a gift, making sure the margins are there so they can frame it nicely.
Of course. My phone's ringing. Let me. Wow, 3 times one night. Okay. Telemarketers that won't take no for an answer.
Oh, yeah.
There they go.
So I can give a couple recommendations for books. A lot of calligraphers talk about this medieval calligraphy by Mark Drogan. Mm-hmm. It's really good, but it covers mostly early period. And this one was given to me as a gift, and I'm really thankful. And it goes through the history of the lettering, what the scribes used to use, the scripts that were used, but it's a lot of early period and got examples, and they have quite a bit on technique. So you'll see, for people who are new to calligraphy, we'll talk about how some of the line work works in calligraphy. Let me see if I'm trying to get it on frame. Opposite of what I think it should be.
In the past, I've just Googled whatever particular calligraphy was the norm of that time period.
Yes.
So
And there's lots
That's
of good
all I've ever done.
examples. But also, they'll give you sometimes just alphabets, but they won't talk about, sometimes they won't talk about, unless you're looking for it specifically, they won't show you how the lines are created or the angles. A lot of them have different, you'll see a lot of different things where you'll have it talking about the angle that the pen was held. And so there's some of that works with the different hands because it's more like what was written back at the time. Tracing when you're learning calligraphy is definitely a thing. But again, there's lots of examples in this book on how to do your different line work. My newest book I will show next goes through a lot more hands. And I'll also show how some of the calligraphy works with artwork as well in the Mark Grogan book.
My original sergeantry scroll that I wrote a long time ago is a prime example of why you don't use pens that have acid in their makeup.
Yeah.
It looks like somebody cut out some of the calligraphy because I was using, I think, Sharpie or something like that, and it just sort of chewed up the scroll work.
Yeah, it can chew up the scroll work or it can just disappear.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing to think about when you're doing scroll work is you want someone to be able to keep it for 15, 20, 30, 40 years and still look pretty close to how it stopped, how it was given to them. This is the other calligraphy book, A Complete Guide by Julian Chazal. And it talks about different kinds of paintbrushes that were used, different nibs, goes through a whole lot more information about calligraphy if you're interested in that kind of thing. And it goes through early period and later period, things that were commonly used. A lot of Gothic fonts are in this book. You'll get more of a variety in this book I have found than the medieval calligraphy book. Both are very good books. I kind of like this one a little bit more personally because I can see things clearer. And when you get to the actual where it's teaching you how to write the letters, you get more detail as to, you'll get like numbers as to this first is done and that is done and this is done. It's kind of like write by numbers. And so I can put those as links as well on Amazon and book into the section I'm going to put on the website about materials. And so I saw this book from another friend of mine. And I was like, that's what I need. It gives lots of good details. It gives lots of good lesson. And since I'm going to be tracing it, it gives me enough space to practice each section. And it gives a lot of the flourishes that we see in especially Gothic initials, if you really want to get fancy. Another thing about your sergeantry letters. If your baron or baroness are not real clear on maybe what they're asking for in a letter, always okay to ask them, is there anything that you'd like to see in the letters? A lot of times what I've seen for Audiantum, they want it to be representation of you. One of the guys was even talking about when he did his sergeantry letters, he did it in Norse runes and he did misspellings because he wouldn't have known how to necessarily read. in his persona, in his time. And so he kind of made mistakes to be more of who his character actually would be. It was kind of funny when I heard that story. I'm like, that kind of makes sense. You can get as frilly as you want with them, or you can be as simple. And since they won't get framed, I wouldn't be so concerned about doing margins, but making sure that it's archival ink, and making sure that, you know, it's a representation of who you are and the work you're going to do for the Baron and Baroness. And it's kind of a first impression. I mean, they know you, but it's also a way for them to see your letter saying, I want to be a sergeant for you. Kind of put your best foot forward. It would be my recommendation. But make it as frilly or non-frilly as you want. Be as period as you can, I would recommend. Persona development is something I've heard is important when you're going after your sergeantry. So, you know, try to stick with artwork that be from your time and era. You can even research what colors may have been used to paint during that time period. What calligraphy hand was used. All those kind of things. Because it will show your attention to detail. And we're at 8 o'clock. Are there any other questions or ideas or thoughts? Their Excellencies have left the room. I see things in chat.
Sorry, we have a secondary screen that we watch things on because it's easier to see.
Yeah.
No, I thank you very much for taking the time and doing such a thorough job. I really liked having the many examples. It's always useful to see what exactly is being described. Your Excellency, did you have anything to add?
Oh, well, we were commenting about when you're asking, you don't know what their excellencies necessarily want for letter of intent. I kind of feel like it should be an effort you feel proud of. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to judge somebody's skill. I am going to judge their effort.
No pressure.
Yeah, I wanted to show the examples because I could sit here and draw, but I draw very lightly. So something where people will be able to see that I'm drawing something right there. And I wouldn't just draw on ink. So I'm like, I can show examples of what I've done in the past. It's visible.
Yeah, and it's great having so many options. Like I was saying, it's really nice to be able to see the super ornate and what appears to be more simple, but I know that it is equally thought out and ornate in its way. Yes, it gives hope to people like me who can only fill in the lines and in fact require someone to give me a color-coded copy before I can put paint to page. So
And if you get something from someone and you can find out who the artisan is, you can always ask them, well, what was your intent with this?
Yeah.
If you're interested in kind of having some color code ideas, you know, what was the inspiration for this?
Okay, that's good to know. They haven't let me move past note cards, mainly because it takes me like 2 hours to do one note card this thick. So
Hey, I am super slow. I won't enter one of those 90-minute things. I'm like, I know I'm not a fast painter, and I'd rather not try to feel like I'm rushing through something and then mess it up, because those are scrolls. Those are given usually with like the, you know, quick things at events where they'll do iron scribes.
yes.
Those are going to be usually used the day of or very soon. And so I'm like, oh God, if I make a mistake, you know, I'd rather make sure I've got the time to put my effort into it. And sometimes I can do something quick and sometimes I just can't. I'm like, nope, I'm not the Aine Scribe here. That's not me.
Right. Everybody does different things. I saw Levi just commented that he is also in the paint by numbers camp. So it's
And that is totally valid. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't. When, as I said, signing and I'm teaching a class, I have everything laid out where you can see my whiteout mistakes. You can see how many times maybe I whited. You know, use whiteout to make it go away.
yeah.
I want to feel like, oh, because when they get it, when someone gets something to paint, it looks as perfect as it can be. And that can be intimidating when you're like, but if I design, what if I make a bunch of mistakes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have tools and we have things to fix that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank goodness.
I was seeing someone
Painting
was
are
maybe
interesting because you have to do those little critter things and stuff. And, you know.
Oh yes, the marginalia. Yes,
Yeah,
our barony is very fond of marginalia to cover small errors.
Margin is fantastic for that as well. Eden Celeste has an amazing class on how to cover up oopses when you're painting.
I've taken it. It's fun.
She is phenomenal. I still haven't had an opportunity to take that class yet because I'm like, I could really use that. That would ease my mind a whole lot when I'm painting.
Maybe this fall I'll tap up Eden. So.
I also was talking about doing artwork via digital. Like I'm using my iPad a lot to do artwork. And so if you have a device that you feel comfortable drawing on, or you can do something on your computer and cut and paste and use Microsoft Paint, as long as you're meeting the guidelines, no one's going to judge.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're turning more work in digitally anyways, because whoever's doing all the copying, it's within the budget of their highnesses, their excellencies, everybody's budget for the final work, usually, to have those copies be made. And so you can get reimbursed to make the copies, but you don't need to. You can scan it in and send it to whoever you need to send to most of the time these days. They'll usually let you know if they don't have that capability, but I've been seeing less and less of that. And if someone doesn't have the capability, there's a bunch of us who do have the capability to get it to them. And so if you like to do things digitally, ask for help, ask for guidance, but it's definitely a thing. I've been having a whole lot more fun drawing on my iPad because I don't have to erase things 20 times to get it perfect. I erase it once and it's gone. I can do it in layers. I can stack it up there's a function to make it a layer. And so I can go, I'll test this out. Oh wait, that didn't look good. I can just swipe left and that layer goes bye-bye. There's great programs for designing charters on an iPad. I know them the best because that's what I use, where you can actually pick your size of paper and you can actually have the grid work as well, so you can make sure the lines are straight. There's lots of tools out there. I saw that Fred has an iPencil, I think. Was it you, Fred, that had that? Yep. I've had Pro. Procreate is what I use for drawing on my iPad. It's $10 once and that's it. And you get all the updates. It's not like Adobe. It's pretty easy to use. And if someone has an iPad and wants to learn about it, I can help with that. I know Jillian, what's her SCA name? Elizabeth Trinidad Carlisle uses Microsoft Paint a lot, where she'll cut and paste things that she likes and will print it out and then use a light table and trace it onto the paper she wants it on. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways to do it where you're not going to be pulling your hair out. So if you feel like you're getting...
That's how I did the calligraphy on my first sergeantry school.
Yeah, it's totally... Tracing is a thing. So if you want ideas on how to do something like that, there's a bunch of us who do it, and highly recommend it. It helps a lot.
Oh, so if I take and don't go too hard, I could actually put paper over the top of, say, a flattened out monitor.
Mm-hmm.
Thought of that.
Yeah, don't push too hard because it might hurt your screen, but yeah, you can do that.
Well, like I said, I wouldn't go very hard. It would be just a matter of using it for a light table on top of
Correct.
something I want to trace.
I have a piece of plexiglass I have turned into a light box. I can just stick a monitor under and do all my tracing that way.
I've got a number of extra monitors, so I'm thinking I can do that.
I'd rather encourage people to use their creativity to do their artwork without, and then not make it like, oh, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. It's what the final product looks like that matters the most.
Not bad.
And however you can
You
get
know, stuff in the vase?
thing, that's what it, and so I have, before I got my light box, I have a glass table that I put a light underneath. I don't know if it's plugged in. Where I would put the papers on top and I would be able to use that as a light table. I have a light box now because I can dim the light or brighten the light as much as I want. And it's only like $36 on Amazon, and it's 11 by 14 or 11 by 17 actually, I think. And so there's lots of options to make the work easier and enjoyable. If you feel like you're pulling your hair out designing, please let me know. I will help you come up with ways where you feel like, okay, I can do this now. I don't have to pull my hair out. If you're getting stressed or frustrated by something with your process, there's plenty of us who can help you come up with a process that might make it easier for you. The more it's easy, the more you have fun with it, the more you'll do it. And we want more artwork from all over the summits. We want to show off our artisans. Kingdom has amazing artisans. We all know that. We see it frequently. I want to raise the summits up. And that's what I'm trying to do.
There. Can you, it doesn't look on my screen like it's coming out. It looks a little too white.
No, that's white.
That's all white.
So what?
You gotta put it right up against the camera to get the glare off. Closer you bring it up. There
Oh,
it
there
is.
we go.
That's amazing.
Mufasa.
I like that.
Mufasa and the lamb.
And the
Yeah,
wall.
Lamb?
I've been tracing and doodling and doing some Celtic artwork. So
Oh, one of my favorites.
So.
I started out doing Celtic because that's one of my favorite types.
well, my persona is a Pictish person from the era of the Book of Kells.
Oh, nice. I'm from 8th or 10th century Ireland as well for my persona. Book of Kells,
Well, for being somewhere in 200 years old.
nice. Very cool. Any other questions or comments? Tracing is period from Levi, definitely. Ingenuity, yes, we like ingenuity. CAD is an amazing way to design. Someone said my device was done on CAD before I sent it in. CAD is a computer-aided design program that architects and interior designers and people like that use, and I know many other people use CAD as well. Yeah, there's lots of opportunities. Be inventive, be creative, and on the website for summits, I will have the Scrabble page updated probably in the next week, and have some things there for people to go and look at. And I think that's all I really have to say right now.
Well, thank you again.
It was awesome.
We really, like I said, we really appreciate you doing this class for us and giving us some great information. We're making our sergeants do the thing, and so it's good to have an idea of what the thing can look like. So we appreciate that.
When painting, just a couple more notes on that real quick.
Oh, sure.
We tend to use gouache a lot. It is a opaque watercolor But if you guys want paint suggestions for brands, I use Arteza because it's inexpensive, and I got 60 colors, and I like lots of colors. There's pearlescent colors and metallics. They have a decent gold and a decent silver. Some people don't like the Arteza. I haven't used the really expensive paints because I know as soon as I get to that kind of quality, I'd be like, that's all I will want to use. So if I don't know the wheel is broken, I'm not going to try to fix it until I can.
Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
We use the cheap stuff from Michael's ourselves, so
Yeah.
it's. I mean, in my house, not my barony. My barony is cool. It's me.
I actually recommended the Arteza to a lot of people because it's a good beginner paint.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to use. It's pretty. There's some colors you're always going to have problems with. Greens are always a problem. Some purples are always a problem. But I also know tips and tricks to make those kind of things look a little bit better because the way that the color adheres to the paper and can be blotchy at times, adding just a little bit of pearlescent to it makes those spots and those inconsistencies kind of not look like they're there.
Okay. Excellent.
Tips and tricks. I could go on and on about all the tips and tricks I've learned.
We can make another class for that. Tips and tricks. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's been a lovely class. We'll let you head off and enjoy the rest of your evening. Yes, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you. And if people have questions, we'll send them your way.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.